Sometimes the truth is weirder than fiction, and today I've got 5 stories which will really leave you shaking your head, thinking, how is any of this possible? Let's dive right into them. "50-year-old Stephen Winfrey had a lifelong passion: hunting rabbits. Stephen, who was an unmarried and unemployed father of 2, was living in the city of Doncaster, UK. He was described as a very giving man who was always a good laugh, and even though Stephen really did not have much, he was very content in his life. As long as his dogs, ferrets and his garden, he was the happiest. And given where he lived, there were plenty of spaces around where he could go and enjoy his rabbits and ferret hunting. He did have one particular spot that he liked the most, and that was the Squirrelwood Scout Camp, just to the north outside of Doncaster. On New Year's Day morning in 2015, Stephen woke up and he was not feeling the best. He had been taking his depression medication for years by then, but occasionally there were days like that one where Stephen just needed a little extra mood booster. And so he decided that what better way to cheer himself up than go ferret hunting. And so Stephen dressed up and collected his things, and he said to his sister that he was heading out. She reminded him that they were actually having a big family get-together lunch later on, and so he should make sure that he'd be back by then. His sister even suggested that Stephen should take someone with him, but Stephen said nope, he was fine on his own, but promised her that he would be back in time for the lunch. Just a day later, at around 4 p.m, a man was out on a walk through the Squirrelwood Park. He was about halfway through his journey when he noticed something odd poking out of the ground. But he couldn't really see properly what that thing was, and so he decided to get closer to it to investigate. But when he was standing right next to it, he finally realized what he was looking at, and he quickly dialed 999. A pair of police officers were dispatched right away, but nobody could believe what that man just discovered. Tied to a tree was a dog who was whimpering and shaking. But this was not the main reason the police was there. Sticking out of a hole in the ground at a 45-degree angle was the body of a man. His head was fully buried in the hole, and so it was just his torso and legs visible. One of his hands was coming out of the hole in between his legs, and they couldn't see the other one. There were scratch marks everywhere around the man on the ground, most likely because this man was so desperate to free himself and get his head dislodged. But sadly, there was nothing anyone could do to help him. This man was already deceased. Lying next to him were his Wellington boots and his jacket, and 2 bags containing dead ferrets, a spade, and a knife and a net. And this gave a pretty good indication as to what actually happened to this man. It looked as he was there hunting ferrets, but while following one down the hole, he completely misjudged how much space there was, and once he stuck his head inside to look around for these ferrets, he became trapped. And unable to free himself, he soon died of asphyxiation, with his dog witnessing the whole of this gruesome scene. It would turn out that there had actually been a missing person report filed just that morning. And sadly, the missing man was the same man found at the scene, Stephen Winfrey. Stephen's family became worried about him when he did not turn up to their family lunch like he promised he would do, and so they decided to call the police the morning after. The coroner confirmed that his death was accidental and caused by the lack of oxygen, and that there was no foul play involved. Apparently, it was really difficult to say when Stephen passed away, but it is likely that he had been stuck in that hole for at least 24 hours and died several hours before he was discovered. The final verdict was ruled to be a misadventure. I'm sure that many of you are aware that ancient Egypt reaches very far into history. The first of its early dynastic period started more than 5,000 years ago, and historians believe that they know just the pharaoh who brought the Upper and Lower Egypt together to form one united kingdom under his reign. Of course, there are also others who believe that the unification happened over time and not under the reign of one single king. The legend also has it that this pharaoh married a princess of the opposing royal family, and it was since then that king started to wear 2 crowns as a symbol of unification. While there are some disputes about his name, according to an ancient Egyptian historian Manetho, this king was called Menes. There are actually only a few records of this pharaoh, and his name is not included in the most famous books and texts we have uncovered over the years. But that could also be partly because he has been referred to by other names such as Narmer or Aha, which we do have records of. But either way, Menes was said to rule Egypt somewhere between 3100 and 3000 BC. And he was also said to be the first human king of Egypt, inheriting the throne directly from the god Horus himself. And so technically, just like Romulus and Remus of Rome, Menes could be seen as the founding father of Egypt. During his reign of approximately 60 years, Menes is said to establish the city of Crocodilepolis, and as the name might suggest, it was dedicated to crocodiles. According to a legend, one of those crocs carried Menes to a safety after the king's own hunting dogs started to chase him, thus saving his life. However, his next encounter with a wild animal would not go so smoothly. Menes' death is described as nothing but horrible. Historians believe that this king ended up in the maw of a hippo, and that the animal devoured him whole. In ancient Egypt, this was definitely one of the worst ways to go, and sadly it was not unheard of. Of course, there have been other theories about this king's death, and the exact circumstances are very much part of a larger legend that is surrounding Menes, but many historians do believe that this theory is the most plausible of them. Hippo attacks are sadly continuing to this day. In 2022, in Uganda, a hippo emerged from Lake Edward and went on to attack a 2-year-old boy named Paul Iga, who was just playing outside of his house near the lake. The hippo seized Paul in his jaws and began swallowing him whole. Luckily, a neighbor spotted this and ran over to start throwing stones at the animal. To his surprise, the hippo actually got scared and spat Paul out and went back into the lake. The boy was taken to the hospital where he was given the rabies vaccinations, but he would make full physical recovery. Luckily, he managed to get away without any injuries, which is really astonishing considering how dangerous hippos can be. So maybe next time you're near one of these animals, bring some tasty melons for them to munch on instead. It would seem that Isadora Duncan's life was practically filled with fatal accidents. Born in 1877 in San Francisco, Duncan is seen as the pioneer of modern contemporary dance. She moved out to London in 1898 and just 4 years later embarked on a tour across Europe, where she continued to carve her technique and style. She performed with amazing success over America, Europe and Russia, but her personal life was not so lucky. In 1913, Duncan's 2 children, together with their nanny, went out on a car ride across Paris, but the vehicle ended up swerving off the road and into the river Seine, and unfortunately all its passengers would perish. This really broke Duncan's heart, and she went on to spend some time away in Greece and Italy. There she would have another son, but he would sadly die soon after his birth. She eventually ended up returning to the States, but Duncan, soon after doing that, made plans to leave the States again on the infamous ship RMS Lusitania, which of course ended up being sunk by the Germans in 1915. Duncan chose a more budget-friendly option due to her finances at the time, which ended up saving her life, at least for now. In 1921, Duncan moved to Moscow and married the poet Sergei Yesenin, but just 4 years later, in his hotel room in St. Petersburg, Sergei committed suicide. After a life of personal misfortune, Duncan became extremely depressed and spent her final years financially struggling. In 1927, Duncan was back in France. Her good friend Marie Desti, who was also the mother of the famous American filmmaker Preston Sturges, gifted Duncan a long hand-painted silk scarf. Duncan immediately fell in love with the gift and draped it across her neck. Later on, she and her male companion Benoit Falchetto decided to leave the party in his car, a Milcar CGSS. This car did not have a roof, so you would be exposed for the entire duration of his journey. And because the weather was getting cold that evening, Desti asked Duncan to wear a cape, but she refused. Duncan wanted to only wear that scarf on her, and so off they went. Unfortunately, this is exactly where things went wrong. Just as the car was pulling out of the parking lot, Duncan's scarf became trapped in a rear wheel. Desti saw this happening and tried calling out to Duncan to warn her about the scarf, but it was too late. The force was so strong that it pulled the dancer out of the car, breaking her neck in the process. Duncan was transported into the hospital, but it was too late for her, as she had already passed away. Based on the way Duncan died, if people also pass away from accidental strangulation that is caused by a scarf lodging in a moving vehicle or machine, this became referred to as the Isadora Duncan syndrome, or long scarf syndrome. This was first proposed by a student who, after taking a cycle rickshaw at the Edinburgh Festival, sustained a laryngeal rupture from the same type of strangulation as Isadora. This student managed to survive and recover with no neurological deficit, but this also prompted her to have a look into this kind of accidents, seeing there have been other incidents like that noted. As a result of this, many rickshaws were then fitted with a mesh over their wheels to prevent similar accidents from happening again. Unfortunately, these incidents continue on until this date, especially in countries where scarves and other loose accessories are part of the everyday wardrobe. For example, in 2013, a 15-year-old girl was traveling on a motorcycle when her tuni, which is a long type of scarf usually worn by women in Asia, got caught by the rear wheel of the bike as she was sitting on the pillion. She was immediately taken to the hospital, but she would die 4 days later from the fracture and dislocation of the 5th cervical vertebrae. Basically, the force pulled the scarf so tight that it cut through her neck all the way back into her spine, where it dislodged the vertebrae. Now, there are 2 other very graphic photos apart from the extra I have just shown you, but I'm not going to include that on here. So, next time you are traveling in an open vehicle with a scarf around your neck, consider taking it off. As far as unusual deaths go, this one has got to be the most unfortunate one. You all might remember the name Aeschylus. This ancient Greek is often described to be the father of tragedy, having written between 70 to 90 plays. The majority were of course lost through the ages, but you might be familiar with the Oresteia, 7 Against Thebes, or Prometheus Bound. Ironically, Aeschylus' death seems to be nothing short of tragedy itself. After being invited to Sicily by the tyrant of Syracuse, Hero I, Aeschylus returned to the city of Gela. According to the Latin writer Valerius Maximus, one day Aeschylus was out, just enjoying the day, when he decided to sit down and read a book. And so he found a nice spot overlooking the sea and began reading. Fully immersed in what he was doing, he didn't really pay any attention to anything around him, and that is exactly where his demise came from. Out of nowhere, an eagle flew over the poet's head. And, mistaking his shiny head for a stone, the eagle dropped the turtle it was carrying in its claws. Eagles usually do that so their prey can fall onto the stone to crack its shelf open for the eagle to be then able to eat its meat. But of course, instead, the turtle struck Aeschylus, killing him instantly. In the Natural History, written by Gaius Plinius Secundus, one fascinating detail is added. Apparently Aeschylus was staying outdoors as much as possible, because he was actually trying to avoid his prophecy by being killed by a falling object. He probably never imagined that something could kill him from falling from the sky, and so it would turn out that that was his fatal mistake. Our final story will leave you speechless. Not only is it very unlikely to happen, but also it could have been prevented from happening altogether. 2010 was a very happy year for a 26-year-old woman named Erica Marshall. She was just after marrying her longtime boyfriend and her best friend, Kieran, and the pair were making a big move to Florida. Erica, who was originally from New Jersey, was just after being offered a role at the Kentucky Equine Sports and Rehabilitation Center, which was right up her alley. The newlyweds met back in England, where Erica was pursuing her equine science degree, and the pair married in November and made their move to the USA so that Erica could start working at the prestigious centers right away. There, she would be part of the team to offer a range of rehabilitation therapies for horses so that they could compete again, and Erica could not have been happier. Fast forward to 2012, Erica was just at a center attending to a horse. Herself and her colleague Sorka needed to walk a horse into a hyperbaric chamber where it would inhale 100% oxygen under higher air pressure. This treatment was said to have a great healing powers for various medical conditions, and this animal was there to be treated for EPM, which in horses is a neurological disease caused by parasitic infections of the central nervous system. Now, this horse had been in the chamber 4 other times already, and so for some reason, the 2 women decided not to sedate it this time. They probably thought that the horse was now confident and comfortable in the chamber, so the tranquilizer was not needed this time. Unfortunately, they would be wrong. Erica walked the horse into the chamber while Sorka began preparing everything from the outside. After that, Erica exited the chamber, but she noticed that the horse was now behaving very anxiously. It would not stay still, and it began moving around the chamber as it was trying to find a way out. Then the worst happened. The horse, now fully spooked, began thrashing and kicking its steel-clad hooves around, desperately trying to get out. It managed to kick through the padding that was around the room and protected various parts of the chamber. This exposed the outside metal wall. As the horse kept kicking its steel-clad hooves against that metal wall, this created a spark which ignited with the pure oxygen that the chamber was now full of, and this caused a massive explosion. Now, all of this happened so quickly that the two women had no time to do anything about it. The blast was so loud that apparently it was heard over 30 miles away. The horse was killed instantly, and unfortunately, so was Erica. Sorka would end up surviving after she was transported to the hospital, and the other 30 horses that were at the rehab at the time remain unharmed as well. The center confirmed that Erica and Sorka treated horses in the chamber all the time, up to 6 horses a day, so they were very familiar with all the procedures necessary. It seems that this freak accident could have been prevented by giving the horse the tranquilizer, and it will likely remain a grim reminder that no matter how much you think that the animal might be used to a certain procedure, it is never a wise idea to deviate from using any sedatives. Otherwise, unexpected things can happen, and they might even end up costing your life. Let me know which story you found the most bizarre, and I'll see you all very soon with a brand new episode. Until next time.